The purge has begun. Today, Twitter and Facebook have deleted the accounts of US President Donald J. Trump, as well as General Michael Flynn, who was pardoned by Trump. It's not going to end here. It will keep going down the line. And of course, the fervent adherents of the left are cheering it on, not seeing the more insidious, grander picture. Now, the past couple of days, we have been witness to some of the more tumultuous times in this nation's history. From the conspiratorial minded Donald Trump and his base to the quasi leftists who are standing on a soapbox acting as the moral police in opposition. With Trump now conceding the race, he has abandoned, to an extent, those who wanted to overturn the election at the Capitol or interfere within it. The events at the Capitol have yet to be investigated fully. There are some suspicious circumstances as to why the Park Police and the Capitol Police were caught off guard to an extent when this was a planned event weeks prior to yesterday. I won't entertain speculation here, so we can only go by the facts. And what is coming is a more harrowing future. As of right now, they are trying to draft legislation or try to enforce Amendment 25 to pursue pushing Trump for his complete removal from office. They just can't wait a week and a half to do it. They have to do it now. It's imperative that we do it now. The man's a danger. Not to say that he isn't, but to those on the left who are cheering this on, you are in no better position than the people of the right. You support the war machine of the Pentagon, of the military industrial complex. You support authoritarian values, censoring speech. You support the continued degradation of the most valuable assets to the United States: healthcare, Social Security, education. You support the one side of government you won't condemn because these are the people that you voted in to represent you. You're not better than Trump supporters. You're just as worse or just as bad as them, just as fervent as them, just as fanatic as them. Maybe not as conspiratorial minded, maybe not as gullible, but you are politically ignorant. When Obama was bombing 7 Arab countries in Iraq, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Libya, Syria, Yemen, the Sudan, you ignored these crimes. You ignored the thousands that were killed. You ignored the tens of thousands that were displaced from their homes. You ignored a total, complete coup d'etat of Libya and the near coup d'etat in Syria. You ignored when Obama allowed or agreed to General David Petraeus' draft memo regarding funding jihadist organizations in Syria in hopes of upending the Bashar al-Assad regime. You ignored that Obama signed off on that in 2011. Instead, you basically pointed the fingers at your adversaries and said they're committing egregious crimes in our name. But yet, you completely ignored the egregious crimes that were happening in your party in your name. You are hypocrites, just like those of the right. They too are hypocrites. They do the same things as you do. I don't see Nancy Pelosi or Mitch McConnell fighting in the streets. I don't see Donald Trump and Barack Obama fighting in the streets. I don't see Joe Biden and Mike Pence fighting in the streets. I only see my common American citizen from both the left and right fighting, not just in the streets, but also advocating for a censorship of civil liberties so they can silence the other side, not knowing that it's going to haunt them in the future when some right wing fascist, far more aggressive than Trump ever wished he was, far more nationalist, will come along and visit that upon you. It's not the officials, it's the entities behind them that are not taking center stage, that are in power. So, for you wanting the complete censorship of Trump, of right wing authoritarians like a Charlie Kirk, a Ben Shapiro, or an Ann Coulter, and it disgusts me even mentioning their names. Knowing, not or ignoring the fact that when a real right wing authoritarian, which Trump wasn't, he was just a narcissist and a grifter who pandered to the lobbyists. A real authoritarian will come along and visit upon those same institutions to subjugate the speech and the legislation that will pass under you clapping for it. And those institutions will, of course, subjugate your speech because this isn't about left and right anymore. This is about suppressing the American public further and further away from each other in hopes of one side subjugating the other side enough to where the federal government will eliminate the side that wins or appears to be winning and destroy you both. Those of the left who are railing against the Trump or, well, let's just call it pro Trump, they're not all conservatives. I know a lot of conservatives who condemn what they were doing, and I condemn it too. But I think the act of revolt is a human right, not just an American right, a human right of holding these people accountable for their actions. And because the Trump supporters who raided the Capitol under false pretenses, there was no election fraud, their act was right, their message was wrong. And so when next time the federal government creates or manufactures or endorses even more egregious acts in our name, such as invading Iran, such as taking away maybe the Second Amendment, for example, or maybe eliminating uh, civil liberties, you won't be able to march or to descend upon the Capitol. You'll be seen as terrorists, which is the reason why that label, the meaning, the word terrorist in the Patriot Act was left open for discussion, which is what I previously mentioned in my previous video. But I had to do a follow up video because I see all this dissension on Twitter and on Facebook coming from the left in uh, demonizing the right, alienating from them. What you should be doing, you actual true liberals who don't have a political affiliation, the real independents, the real liberals, you shouldn't be forcing this alienation of Trump supporters. You should be trying to win them over on your side because you don't have an affiliation with any political sect. If you are actually a liberal, if you are actually independent, you are adamantly opposed to the Democrats and Republicans of the government. Excuse me. Because I can proudly tell you right here, right now, I am adamantly opposed to the federal government of the United States. I do not endorse violence. They do. I do not endorse war or conflict. They do. And you can sit there on your moral soapbox, you people of the left, supporters of the Democratic Party, and demonize Trump supporters, but you're no better than them. You support all or similar ideals that you vilify the right for. In fact, you ignore certain crimes under Obama and Clinton because you believe that they're on your side. Well, I'm not on your side. And for yous of the right who are clapping because I'm railing on the left, I'm not on your side either. I want you to come to the realization that you have been politically brainwashed. And it took years to ferment these ideals into your mind. I'm not your enemy. And you are not the enemies unto each other. And the reason why I wanted to do this follow up video is because I'm trying to desperately reach out to those of the left and right who are at each other's throats at the current moment that you are not the enemy. The enemy is the people that have helped shape your mindset to think this way because you are better controlled this way by being led through your emotions, your primitive emotions, anger, resentment, vitriol. You're making the wrong decisions. We have to start thinking 10 and 20 years down the line because if we don't, we will lose whatever's left to fight back. Or maybe it's the wish of the people to admit defeat. Now, I can tell you that I haven't done much good in my life, but I don't want to be a defeatist. And I have to come clean is that, I'm very apathetic to human affairs, but I also don't want to um, be remembered for that. And for these little videos I do, for as little people as I reach, I want to say at least I want to fight and say at least I tried. In trying to get people to understand and shed these divisive properties from their mind. It's not going to happen overnight. I'm not going to change your mind. I want you to simply think. I want you to sit back and think about what is happening for the future of this country and for the world. The federal government is the enemy of the United States and to the globe. And if you don't understand that much, just read about history. I'm not telling you to open up a high school history book. Just look at history through independent, verifiable sources. They're out there. It's on the internet. Before the internet is becoming regulated, look what they're doing now under the guise of restricting hate speech. That's left open to interpretation by corporate oligarchs. And where do they get that power from? Congress, the Capitol, where war legislation is passed, where legislation is passed to restrict civil liberties in the name of national security, to restrict civil liberties abroad under the guise of national security, to subjugate people of color under the guise of globalism, uh, of spreading democracy. I'm sorry, but that is globalism. We need each other. We don't need to alienate each other because once we do that, we are creating an enemy that isn't there. The enemy is staring right at us, watching from the sidelines, destroying each other. Yesterday, during the riots at the Capitol, who was leading the way? One of them was Alex Jones from InfoWars, a known conspiratorial provocateur who spreads misinformation and disinformation on a daily basis. He's a fraud. He was from the background yelling on his bullhorn, "We're storming the Capitol." And of course, people being led on their emotions and their hatred for their preconceived enemy, the people of the left, they went. It's called groupthink, a psychological manifestation of when a group of people are being led by an ideal or a small act. They weren't thinking. We should be storming the Capitol when we drop bombs on Syria to try and overthrow a democratically elected government. We should be raiding the Capitol when they promote $600 checks to a financially broken people in the middle and lower classes and claim these are significant amounts of money. We should be storming the Capitol when they pass legislation subjugating our civil liberties, restricting speech, destroying small businesses, giving tax breaks to the wealthy and affluent and to major corporations. We should be storming the Capitol when foreign lobbyists from Saudi Arabia and Israel persuade our elected officials to invade countries on their behalf. We should be storming the Capitol when the CIA and the intelligence community lie about what happened on 9/11, and hide information from the 9/11 victims' families, which is what Attorney General William Barr did earlier this year. So did Barack Obama. We should be storming the Capitol every single time these criminal elements from the left and right political paradigm commit criminal abuses in our name, whether it's happening here or abroad. And if you don't speak out, if you don't do something, then you have no right to complain about whether one side is committing abuses while the other side is doing it and you ignore it. You have no right to complain. You have no soapbox to step on. You should not be viewing yourselves as the enemy. Don't alienate each other, uplift each other, educate one another. Yes, it's hard in times like these. We're being uh, subjugated with these restrictions due to the pandemic. Yes, we're coming on hard times financially. There are people out in the street. Homelessness will be a problem in the next 24 days once the Rent and Mortgage Suspensions Acts are lifted. I don't see anybody from the Democratic or Republican parties uh, being hurt by this economic crisis, nor the pandemic. In fact, some of these people actually got rich off the pandemic. Kelly Loeffler, for one, Richard Barr, for another, before the pandemic even broke out. I hope that maybe one day some people will finally look in the mirror and they'll realize that the world that they have encountered all their life was basically a mirage. This isn't the world that we have envisioned for ourselves, nor have our founding fathers, who probably would have said decades ago to revolt. They would be absolutely horrified if they could see it today. The mere fact that we are in conflict with each other is the end of democracy as we know it. Unless that day comes when you do look in the mirror and you do realize that all these divisive human applications like politics, racism, religion, sexism, and all the other uh, catchisms that were made to put you in these divisive groups, to always be at odds with one another. That's not the world we live in. Meanwhile, the forces that govern these constructs are benefiting from our own destruction. And they always want us unhealthy, broke, financially destitute, hungry, wanting, needing, giving us a pittance, even when we need a whole lot more. We must hold these people accountable for what they did to us and what they're currently doing and for what they're about to do. Stop voting these people in. Excuse me. Fight back. It's going to take most of us to suppress this monolith called the federal government. And I can't say it enough. And this will be the last time today that I'll say it. We need each other now more than ever in order to make the changes that needs to be made to benefit us and the world.